What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and today we're going to be going over something very exciting. We're going to be going over changing animations, and with it, being able to change other things about the character when we have certain weapons equipped, or when we're attacking with certain weapons or certain equipment. So we get started. We have a system in place to be able to punch if we don't have a weapon. And we have two animations we can play. We can punch with our right hand and our left hand. And we can go and we can punch the pumpkin golem. You can see he's already lost some health. But we have, of course, our inventory system as well. Now, I have some weapons here. I have a sword, an axe, and a dagger that I can pick up. And before, when you would attack with it, you would just use the punch animation. Well, now I've kept everything that I was using. But instead, I've added animations that play depending on the weapon you're holding. Now this, how slow it is based off of the play rate, the weapon speed, which I've slowed down for the sword because before I was punching to differentiate them. We should probably speed this up, but if you've been following the series directly, however, you will see these very slow animations, so I just left them as is. We can always make them faster later. Anyway, we have different animations. So for the sword, you can see that we were able to slice our opponent using that animation. I'm going to restart so that the pumpkin golem is back, and let's try out the dagger. So I've got my dagger. In fact, the dagger is very, very slow. You couldn't really notice it when it was the just the fist, but. And then lastly, we need the axe. If we restart one more time, let's get the axe and use it. Now, we hold the axe the wrong way. It's just something we can easily fix, but here we go. If we use this, now its speed is a lot faster, and it also has a ton of damage, so we just killed him in one hit. But there you go. You can see these are actually all different attacks. So other than the ridiculous speeds, we are going to basically... This will do everything we need as far as this system is concerned for today. I do want to have idle stances for everyone in these, and you know, perhaps different walking stances and stuff. So I've set up a blend space as well for the sword that I'm not currently using, but I will demo in the middle of this. And you guys will be able to see how you can set up your own animations for different weapons as well. However, I'm going to wait to implement them a bit until I have the dual wielding in, which is coming very soon, and that's because I have a few things I want to adjust with the way we hold the weapons before I get into that sort of thing. Anyway, let's get started. So if we go into our character, and we're gonna start in the, let's start with the anim BP. Okay, and let's take a look at the state machine. So this is what the state machine looks like now. Again, we are on episode, I believe, 19. So we are relatively far along in the series. We have a long, long way to go. But if you'd like to get caught up on everything we've done, I'll leave the playlist right here in the top right corner. And I'll also leave the weapon episodes right here in the top right corner in case you just want to see those, because that's what we're going to be using today to equip our weapons. And so if you don't know how to do that or you don't have that yet, you'll want to do that now. Okay. So you can see it's the same except for these three states, and I'm going to cover each state even though they're pretty much the exact same every time, and once we do the first one, you'll probably know how to implement the other two. But you'll need to know how to do this for everyone that you want to have different animations for. So essentially what we need to do is our weapon has a weapon type on it. So if we go back to the code for a second and take a look at what we've got, we have this default weapon.h, and we have an e-weapon type. I put in default sword, dagger, and axe. Each one that you have can line up with a specific animation type. Oh, this one's the sword. Now, if you want different animations for different swords, or, you know, you have this sword that has one animation, but a separate sword, perhaps like a legendary sword, has this set of animations. Those, of course, will also have to be a different weapon type. They probably would be anyway, but just letting you know ahead of time that the way we're setting up the system, your weapon type will need to have one for every type you want to have a separate animation system for. Now, if we go back into the code, there's a few things we've done throughout the series so far that allowed us to perform an attack, and I was grabbing a random integer value to determine if we should punch with our left or right hand. Now, this can still be used. I won't cover this again because we've already covered this, but this can still be used if you want to perform different attacks randomly for the weapon that you have. If you don't want it to be just a series, say I want to be able to perform my overhead slash with the sword, but also like a whirlwind attack. If you want those to be random attacks, just when you go to attack with the sword out, you can use the same system that we use for the fists. I'll leave a link to that iCard if you want to check out how we did that in that episode. However, otherwise, actually, our job is very easy today. Basically, what we want to do is duplicate this state, or essentially take what we want out of this state and put it into these other states. So I started off by right-clicking and adding three states, and I just called them sword underscore attack 1, dagger underscore attack 1, and axe attack 1. Now, I called them 1 again because if we have an alt attack, or maybe this is the light attack and we also have a heavy attack we're going to perform, then we'll want to have a separate animation for that. It is up to you whether you want to perform. You could mix all of these attacks into one state and then use the weapon type enum to determine what animation we should go to. Just like we did here, how we blended poses, so we determine which animation, either left or right, that we should go to based on this integer value. You could use an enum value to determine which animation we should go to. However, I've decided to make different states for each, just because I felt like it would be a little bit easier. It's very possible we're going to have combos, or at least some sort of, 2-hit, 3-hit systems where we can use certain animations, certain weapons to chain to other weapons and animations. And because of that, sure, we can do the logic to easily differentiate which attack we have to do based off of our current weapon and its type. However, as this gets more complex, in my opinion, it's much easier to have 3 separate states that we can then branch off of and add new states to. So, for each one of these states, they're pretty simple. This is what the states look like themselves, and they are all the same except playing the proper animation. So I have the character reference. I grab the character reference's attack speed, just like this. I grab my animation in here. So I pulled Assassin Sword Attack 1, which is right here. And then I've upgraded Unreal, so mine is a little bit different than what it looked like in the previous episode. Before, this was just a checkbox that'll say expose as pin, I believe. Yep, expose as pin. So I'm on 4.26.2 now, so it's a little bit different. But if you click this little box that says bind next to the play rate basis and expose as pin, then you can plug this in. And then put that into your output animation pose. And that's how we can get this animation to work right off the bat, to play it. And just to show you, all of my states look the same that we're doing in today's episode. There's the dagger, and here's the axe. Make sure you turn off looping. You don't technically need to. It should return anyway, but solve some problems down the line. All right, then just connect your arrows from idle to each attack and each attack back to idle, or whatever states you want them to be able to go to. And then we'll look at the transitions. So to transition from one state to another in this, essentially what I've done is I have the character reference and I make sure that they are using attack 1. Attack 1 we decided early on in the series. It's a Boolean that we use to determine if essentially the light attack or the first attack that the character has is available and is being used by them. So we have a Boolean here, has used attack 1. And again, this is already something we did in the series, so no need to copy this if you already have it. But when we actually press the key to attack, we check if we can attack and then set that to be true. So basically we're just checking, has the character tried to use the basic attack or the light attack? And we need to see what our current weapon type is. Now this current weapon type stuff is new. So if we go to our event graph in the ANMBP, now there's a few ways we can set this current weapon type. Basically, the current weapon type is going to do what it sounds like. It's going to take the weapon type of the character, the weapon that they're holding. In cases of dual wielding, we'll need to know what each weapon is, or if it doesn't matter, then we'll just need to know that we are dual wielding. And we can grab the weapon's type. I've decided to do a little bit extra just to make sure that we do a validated get here on the current weapon. So we could grab from our character reference, grab current weapon, and check if it's valid and all of that, and that would work. The problem is doing isValid checks in the state machine itself is a little bit weird, and it will actually give you some warnings about things not working as intended, perhaps, based on timing of them, and they can't be trusted, and all these other things. So really, in my opinion, what a better way to do it is, and it does add a little bit more to the blueprint update animation, however, I think it's okay. Again, it's still the preferred method over putting it directly in the transition rule itself. Is at the end of blueprint update animation, which is essentially like a tick function for the ANMBP. At the very end, I have this logic. It's very simple. I grab the character reference that we have, and then I get the current weapon. I right-click the current weapon, convert it to a validated get. Then, off the weapon, I grab the weapon type. This is all stuff we have created in the past. But I'm actually going to promote to a variable this right here, this weapon type. Now, I've already done it, so I'm going to delete the new one I just made. But that's exactly what I did up here. So I have this current weapon type variable that I just made right here. And this is just a weapon type enum. It's our weapon type enum value. And so if the current weapon is valid, that means we are holding a current weapon. When we don't have a weapon out, current weapon is actually null pointer. It's null pointer by default. We can't technically like sheath our weapon or get rid of our weapon currently. We have to update that in the inventory. But if we have a current weapon, then we can grab its type. If not, I set the current weapon type to be default. Remember, that's one of my enum states. Default in this case, I'm going to use as none. I mean, I'm not going to leave any of my weapons as default on purpose. So if it has a default as the current weapon type, we can assume that we don't have a current weapon. So if it's not valid, I set current weapon type to default. Otherwise, if it is valid, I just grab the weapon type and set it to this value. Okay, that's pretty simple, and that will make sure that our current weapon is always taken care of. So even if the current weapon is null pointer, this will have a default value, and it can choose whether it's equal to this or not, and then go to the proper state, as opposed to giving you issues with things being invalid and trying to access them, and all the other things that can come along with that. So you could see for the sword attack, we have, is the character attacking, and is the weapon that they have the sword? If it is, we're going to go from idle move to sword attack 1. That should be pretty easy and should make sense. So you can probably imagine what the other transition rules are. I'll go through them really quickly. For fists, so idle to just a punch is, has the character used an attack, and is the current weapon type default, basically meaning they don't have a weapon. Then, dagger attack, again, has the character used an attack, and is the current weapon type a dagger? I know you know it by now, but axe, has the character used their attack, and is the current weapon an axe? So that's how you can go from idle, or really any state, to these different attack states. We just basically check if the character's attacking and determine what weapon they have, so we know which state to go to, which animation to play. Now, to return, it's very, very simple. We just make it automatic rule-based. Once the animation is done, we just return back to idle. You can see I do this for all of them. So I don't have a rule in any of these. So you don't have to set that up. Now, at your core, that is all you need to do. For us, we have a few things that we've set up in prior episodes that we need to address now. So when going to an animation, we don't need any sort of event unless we want to randomize our animation that plays. This is what the determine punch animation is for. This triggers an event that randomly grabs an integer value, and then we determine in the state which animation we should play. So you may want to add this for, just determine animation instead of determine punch animation. And you could add it to every start transition event. I did not do that here, so I don't need to. However, on the return, so the attack back to idle, we do have an attack finished transition event. And what that basically does is reset that the character has used their attack, allows them to be able to attack again, and then determines collision and things like that. So we do want to call this. If you don't have this, it will work the first time around. You will be able to attack, but then issues will come up with being able to attack again because our variables aren't reset correctly. So make sure for each of your attacks back to idle, you also include this attack finished. You can see I do it here. Cool. And the last thing that you need to know is on the attacks themselves, and we did this again for our punches, we have a start attack and a notify. We technically had an end attack, but it became obsolete when we started using the attack finished. However, I left start attack in. It's not necessary that you have this. However, I'm using start attack to basically stop the character's movement and lock them into the attack once they reach this frame. So at this point, once they've started this part of the animation, I'm like, okay, they can't move anymore. We want to lock them. You could do it at the very first frame, so as soon as they press the button. You could do it a little bit later. It depends on how you want the game to feel. So we've done this in the past, nothing to be concerned about. However, on our new animations, we should also have this if we're going to, if we're treating the system the same, we want to be as consistent as possible. So you can see the dagger is the same way, and for the axe as well. There you go. And notice I'm using the same anim notify. You don't need to make them separate. It's not a big deal. You can use one anim notify for start attack, one anim notify for attack finished, and do it for all your animations that you need them on, and you'll be good to go. And at that point, that's pretty much all you actually need. If you do want to go ahead and add different states for your idle move, I've made a separate blend space. So this is what we had in the past for blend spaces. This is our movement blend space. I did make another blend space as well, which is for the sword. It's specifically with the sword and shield. And it's made the same way as the other one, just with different animations. You could do what we did just now. For the different, we could use our weapon type to determine which animation we actually want to play. Just to show you, if I put this in, you can see as animation changes, and the blend space does work. And that's great. So see, it looks good when I had the sword, but yeah. So I'm going to leave this out for now. We're going to be doing a lot more with this when we get into the dual wielding, because I want to make it big enough that we can use multiple animations for dual wielding, not just one animation, and then also multiple animations for each individual weapon type, since that's what you see in most third-person games of the action RPG type or the just really free roam third-person games. You have a lot of different stances, a lot of different weapons, so I think it's important that we show that off. Anyway, guys, that's all I got for you today, so thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed and this helped you make your own weapons and animations and put them into your game, please subscribe. It does more for me and the channel than anything else you can do. It's completely free. I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube membership and Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much for giving me that support and continuing to believe in me. I love this series. I can't wait to see where we bring all of these. If If you had any issues with this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. I'll be happy to assist. That's all I got for you today, so thank you so much for watching, guys. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, everyone.